In last week's show, I talked about an article in Mother Jones magazine by Kevin Drum that expressed what seemed to be a strikingly high level of revulsion towards homeless people in the United States. Kevin Drum, who I know have met, wrote that about research conducted on people's attitudes towards the homeless, and Kevin wrote, the researchers suggested that most people are disgusted by the homeless. Kevin Drum goes on to write, no kidding, about half the homeless suffer from a mental illness and a third abuse either alcohol or drugs. You'd be crazy, again, this is Kevin Drum, you'd be crazy not to have a reflective disgust of a population like that. Is that really so hard to get? Well, I quoted that last week, and I said that this to me was an example of Democratic Party and Main Street liberalism's frequent lack of, because Kevin is a very vocal Democrat, very vocal, quote-unquote, liberal, lack of empathy towards other human beings, that lack of empathy is not restricted to Republicans or conservatives in many cases. Now, as it turns out, Kevin Drum was also seriously misstating and misquoting the researchers who conducted that work in the first place. They, in response to an inquiry from The Intercept, from Glenn Greenwald, they responded with a piece that Greenwald and The Intercept published in its entirety. What Professor Spencer, Piston of Boston University said, quote, he said, first of all, not only did they misrepresent their research, but he initially said, especially, and this is the researcher, especially infuriating to me is that he misinterpreted our scholarship to do so. We argue that media coverage of homeless people often portrays them as unclean or diseased, which activates disgust among the general public. But he cites our research as proof that homeless people are inherently disgusting, which, as Professor Piston notes, perpetuates the very problem in journalism our research was trying to solve. In other words, you had researchers pointing out that our media portray homeless people in negative ways, and that prevents people from supporting affirmative programs to help them. This liberal publication, Mother Jones, and its liberal columnist, Kevin Drum, turned around and misquoted that research in order to assert that homeless people are, in fact, disgusting. And that, to me, is so wrong on so many levels. But one of the things that we need to understand when we read a paragraph that says about half the homeless suffer from a mental illness and a third abuse either alcohol or drugs, and encourage people to have disgust for that, in fact, state that that's the only sensible reaction to people like that, what you're really doing is you're not only turning your back on the homeless, you're turning your back on the mentally ill and the drug addicted, both of whom are populations that need help. So again, this supposedly liberal publication and its supposedly liberal columnists have completely missed the point with their liberal elitist view of the world as it is. The fact is that homelessness is a problem of capitalism, especially capitalism as it is practiced in this country. Homelessness took hold in this country after Ronald Reagan cut funding for mental health, hospitalization, and other forms of assistance, putting a lot of people who are incapable of fending for themselves out on the streets. The response, as we stated earlier, should be disgust towards anybody who fails to show the proper level of empathy. How hard is it to get that you need to show disgust towards people who don't want to help the mentally ill, towards people who don't want to help the drug addicted, towards people who don't want to eliminate poverty, towards people who believe in the selfishness of the Republican Party or the self-centered egocentrism of self-described liberals?